3, 2, 1.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Ash on Comics. My name's Ash, and here's today's comic. I told myself I wasn't going to be reading any more XMen books, and I lied, I guess. Here I am. Now, a lot of people, this book came out and got a lot of people, I don't want to say their ruffles fed, a lot of people just like excited, you know? I have been saying XMen sucks since it got rebooted. Now, I did not believe in Jonathan Hickman rebooting the X-Men. I will be honest. If you've been watching my channel that long, you'll know I was one of those people. And when they rebooted Uncanny X-Men, who was doing the book back then? God, it's on the tip of my tongue. Man. He's not an active writer right now. I don't know. Anyways, you guys remember. I'll remember it too probably in a minute after I shut this video down. But they were doing Uncanny X-Men. They cut it. Then they gave it to Hickman. They knew the whole time when they rebooted Uncanny X-Men that the Hickman was going to be getting it. So it was kind of a big controversy because we're like, wait a minute. You knew all along that you were going to be giving Hickman X-Men when you did the Uncanny X-Men reboot. So like you basically defrauded the fans. You promised them like, oh, we're rebooting X-Men and all this stuff. And it was all just a filler lie anyway. And when Hickman got it, there was tons of people like, Ash, you don't understand. Hickman's the best. He's the greatest. Da-da-da-da-da. Look, I didn't really know who the guy was back then. And recently I did a video series that you can watch. And I still do. It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show with my boy Skip. And part of that show, every episode, we did one of the volumes of East of West, which is Jonathan Hickman. And I will tell you, it is one of the greatest comic series I've ever read in my life. It is fan-freaking-tastic. Now, before that, I was convinced to try out the House of X and Powers of X story because everyone was flipping out. And I was like, okay. I tried the #1 issue. I was like, #2. And I don't know. I just kept going. I got to issue 3, and I was like, oh, okay, this is something good. So I read the whole, and that was fantastic. House of X and Powers of X is legitimately one of the best X-Men stories I've ever read in my life. Now, I may not have a great channel, okay, but there's one thing I can at least pride myself is intellectual honesty. I will always give it to you fair. I will always give it to myself fair. I will have prejudice, but I will try to always be transparent what my prejudice is, what my bias are. I have them. Just to say I didn't, it would be stupid and foolhardy. Like every human, you have them, whether you want to admit them or not. And I do have them. And I think the only way to get around your biases is to constantly be conscious of them, to constantly be aware of them. The more that we want to push them back and hide them and be like, oh no, I'm open-minded, you know, and you get what I'm saying. That's when you're more likely to fall in that trap of lying to yourself in order to confirm your bias. Now, I combat that all the time. When I read this book, I was like, this is not going to be good. Everyone's saying it's good. And it's not going to be. I know X-Men sucks. I went after House of X and Powers of X. I read the new X-Men series by Hickman, and I was like, oh man, this guy really can change it around. And those first 6 X-Men issues sucked balls. They sucked. And his New Mutants was some of the worst stuff I've ever read out of Marvel Comics. It was atrocious. I think one of two things. Either A, Jonathan Hickman is outsourcing his writing to some schlacky guy off in India, and he just collects a paycheck, or he's pulling a fast one on Marvel and trolling them. I do not understand how you can be so confident and so utterly fail. It's like night and day. Anyways, so I gave up on X-Men. I was like, I'm not going to continue to buy this just because House of X and Powers of X is good. This is nonsense. It's crap. And as bad as the X-Men and the New Mutants were, the other books weren't necessarily worse, but they were just meaningless. They didn't even have the potential of Hickman. Marauders was a joke. And right from the get-go, I was like, why are you making an X book about one of the worst X villains of all time, and you're giving them their own book? And they completely and utterly have destroyed the character of Kitty Pryde. It's like they don't even understand. It's like I can't decide which is a worse character destruction, what they did to Iceman or what they did to Kitty Pryde. Anyways, so you've listened to me long enough where you stared up at this cover. This is supposed to be a quick review, but I feel it's important to talk about my biases and so forth, because ultimately you're watching this video either just to hear what I thought, because you've already read it and made up your own mind, or you're curious about the information, like you don't want to read it, but maybe you want some information. Should you read it? Should you jump on the bus? And let me just tell you, it's better than the 6 issues of X-Men I read once upon a time that were terrible. That I was like, forget this, I'm done, I'm out. But it's not at all Return to House of X of Powers of X like some people are saying. That's utter nonsense. That's the bias swinging in the other way. That's, in my opinion, people who were like, oh, they just want it to be that way so bad that they're convincing themselves otherwise. What I'm noticing about Hickman at Marvel is someone once told me that Hickman was a disciple of Bendis, and I'm not sure. I'm not an X-Men on either Bendis or Hickman. I don't know their histories and stuff, but we do know that Hickman, at least far, I guess I know. But I'm first aware of Hickman coming into Marvel under Bendis. I think it was Secret Warriors. Bendis did like the first volume, and then Hickman took over. Anyways, I can believe it, because Bendis, one of the things that Bendis does is this blah, 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 just spins wheels and nothing happens ever. It just yabbity, yabbity, just go, 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 go. And you'll read like 16 issues and be like, wait a second, has anything really happened? He dazzles you with bullshit. Hickman is able to do the same things sometimes, and he's been doing it with X-Men where nothing has happened. Or in the case of like when Giant Size X-Men, that first Giant Size X-Men issue came out, there was like 1 or 2 important pages in the book, and the rest was just nonsense filler. It did not need to be there at all. Hickman had 1 page of information to reveal in his grand scheme story, but unfortunately comic books aren't 1 page, so he had to fill it up. And he chose to do it in a book called Giant Size X-Men, which wasn't really giant size at all. It was like 34, 36 pages. It's like, this is a joke even calling it Giant Size X-Men. It should have been a regular X-Men issue, which still would have been a joke at 20 pages, 1 out of 20 pages. But X-Men isn't a episodic story anyway, right? It is episodic. It's not serialized. Each issue was kind of its own individual story. It didn't continue on to so why even have Giant Size X-Men anyway? It was doing the same. Anyways, there's all my biases just coming to the surface because I haven't done an X-Men review in a long time. So this book opens up, then the Oracle. If I understand you correctly, you're looking to make a bit of an impression. Forge's lab. So we see Mystique is talking to Forge. And we know the story about Oracle. She can't be allowed to live. This is all from House of X and Powers of X. There cannot be any fortune tellers, anyone that can see the future, because it will destroy Moira's plans, which is kind of in itself nefarious. But Professor Xavier and Magneto have made a deal with Mystique here, which we'll get to. Now, remember what I talked about stretching stuff out. This book has basically 2 parts, 2 pages, essentially, the information Hickman needs to reveal, and that's it. The rest is just spinning wheels. So we see a discussion between Mystique and Forge, and they're just talking blah, 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 blah. Basically, this whole page is like, oh, look at all these guns around. How do you sleep at night? Says the woman who murders people all the time and has a gun at her hip. This is something a cold-blooded killer like Mystique would not be like, oh my God, you have all these guns. How do you sleep? Like, it just rings so hollow and false. I'm like, who's talking here? And it just goes, and then Forge gives the roundabout answer. Takes forever to get to the whole point of like, it's not really the weapon, it's just a tool, it's whoever uses it, right? We've heard this a million times before, but look at this, 6 panels on here to get to that point, at which point he implies to Mystique, it's the person who uses it. How do you sleep at night? Because she was like, how do you sleep? You know, they both say, I sleep fine. And it's like implying, yeah, Mystique, you're a cold-blooded murderer. It's not really the weapon. It's the how do you sleep? And of course, she sleeps fine because she doesn't have a conscience and she's a cold-blooded murderer. So why did she say the thing in the first place? I don't know. But we're not done. We're going to keep going back and talking about guns and making a weapon. And she wants Forge to make her a weapon of mass destruction, essentially. And, you know, he's like, well, how big do you want your weapon? How, you know, they just go roundabout implying. And she doesn't ever, she could have just come out in one frame being like, I need a weapon that's big enough to destroy an entire gigantic space station. No, she doesn't do that. They got to go back and play this little game. He finally guesses, oh, you're going to blow up Orcus. So he's going to build her basically a super grenade that creates a singularity, which is one of Hickman's favorite things, singularities, which is kind of cool. But it's now kind of cliche, Hickman, and it's like, why? You took something cool and you made cliche here. So you can make a grenade that creates a singularity that was basically a black hole. I don't know how you can just make a black hole small enough to destroy a space station but not hurt everything else. And the pages just keep going on and on. Eventually you get to Magneto and Xavier, who are the sinister assholes that told her, if you destroy Orcus, we'll resurrect Destiny for you, your wife. They don't just say we'll resurrect Destiny. They constantly remind, we'll resurrect your wife because we live in the new woke era. And we got to keep reminding the audiences that Mystique is gay and she's gay married with, they're woke. These are genocidal ethno-supremacists. But hey, at least they're not against gay marriage. Am I right? Like, it's the same twisted nonsense that it's been since the beginning. I hate these characters. Magneto's supposed to be a villain, but he was always a sympathetic villain. He was the guy who went down the wrong path because he survived the genocide, right? And that messed him up. And he was always this villain that you're like, dude, you're bad, but we kind of want to see you redeemed. And Xavier was his friend. I can go with, okay, you're a villain, you should be bad, but he was never just a diabolical, evil son of a bitch. That wasn't his thing. But here, both Xavier and Magneto are just diabolical, evil sons of bitches. And they're playing with Mystique here, who should have never trusted them. Real Mystique probably never would have, because I think she's got better instinct and intuition to these things. But I guess she's desperate. So apparently Mystique, her shape-changing abilities include making environmental suits for herself. I didn't know that was the case. I'm not convinced that it is, but whatever. So she shape-changes into an Orcus guard thing, can go off. She goes from the portal. And we get the credits saying, 2 pages. Oh, XMen. You know, okay, I've complained about this a million times. And this is where we get to the second part. Remember that? Sorry, just 2 parts. First part is Mystique is going to go kill to try to get her wife back. That's all of that. Half the book devoted to this. We already knew this because, well, we didn't know exactly this, but House of X and Powers of X alluded to this event happening in the future, like that this would come to pass. In fact, she did try to do a mission in that story. So here we get the doctor wife whose husband had died. He was a premier scientist on the Orcus station or whatever, and she's transferring his conscious, somehow building the Nimrod thing. So it's like, 20 issues into X-Men, we're finally going to get into the story that House of X and Powers of X talked about, which is Nimrod can't be allowed to go online. So 20 issues later, finally Nimrod is coming online, and we get this story. I go back a page here. So 1, 2, 3 pages. It's all about like sentimentality. Like, oh, look, she's put her husband's consciousness into this fucking cold-blooded killing machine that's meant to annihilate an entire subspecies of people. Oh, look at you. Oh, okay. So, and we keep going, and they're talking about what she did, and we get this weird, really awkward hug thing. I don't know what's going on. And then out of the blue, Nimrod, or actually her husband, is like, oh, that person's a mutant. And he can spot Mystique immediately. And so I was like, wait, record scratch, timeout. You can just spot mutants. Wait, you have the technology. You have the technology to build, but you don't just like put it in the helmets of all your troops. You don't just have this innately on the station like, hey, there's a mutant on the station. You have the technology to instantly go, that's a mutant. You built it into Nimrod, but you didn't put it anywhere else. You just totally just not using it anywhere. Only Nimrod can do it. Like, what? And again, it just doesn't, it's like you're trying to put the triangle peg through the circle hole or whatever. That's what, like, we're going to use Nimrod, but we're going to use him in a different way. Like, it just, I don't understand. You're just, it's a forced use of Nimrod. This doesn't belong, Nimrod doesn't belong to be used this way. This isn't how he was created. But whatever. So Mystique, of course, oh shit, I'm found out. So she's blasting people. Look, she doesn't care. She just kills people. And she pulls out her grenade thing. And this goes on. And it's like, oh, Nimrod can duplicate himself. So he's like, duplicate, I'll handle this. So the duplicate goes off to chase Mystique while he handles this. And it goes on. And the duplicate's chasing Mystique. She's running away. And then the main primary whatever, I guess, teleports out with the singularity thing. And it blows up. He sacrifices himself, and she's like all sad, and then the duplicate is left behind. Why wouldn't the duplicate do this? Why would you look, imagine this for a second. You can duplicate yourself. Bing, there's a duplicate of myself. I need to fall on the grenade or all my friends are going to die. Why would you not have the duplicate do this? No, duplicate, you go off. I'll take care of this and fall. And so the wife is like, are you in there? And then Nimrod coldly looks at her. Dr. Elia Gregor, I am so sorry for what I'm about to tell you. And she's sad because she realizes that it's just cold-blooded. Nimrod is the only thing left. And to which he reveals himself. He calls this himself the first time. I am Nimrod the Hunter. And he blasts Mystique, killing her. But we all know that no one really dies in X-Men. So later we get these evil sad sacks. I don't even remember their name. And they're talking about it's just this plans within plans stuff. And it's like, oh, it's so bad. I guess it's so bad that Dr. Gregor's husband is dead again. Oh, and more just blah, 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 blah. And they mention, oh, the mutants fear us. That's what this is a big deal because they did this because they fear us. That means we're doing something right. So Mystique is reborn out of some weird plant egg, and she comes back. She's like, oh, I failed. It's online. Nimrod's online. And Magneto and Professor Xavier are like, oh, damn, this sucks. You know, blah, blah, blah. And sorry about that. I got an interruption in making the video, which, of course, so we heard the dog in the background. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Right at the end of the book, of course. Perfect timing. So what we see here is the big thing that Hickman does. The big lead up. The whole purpose of the comic is one reveal. There will be an island. Not the first, but the last. The place will seem to be hope for our kind. When those days come, bring back these words. Remember these words. Bring me back. And if you cannot, if they will not, then burn that place to the ground. Now, X-Men fans who've been reading this and paying attention to everything, this is sort of one of those things they've been waiting for. Like, this is way back in the early time, the prophecy not the prophecy. Yeah, kind of a prophecy. Destiny kind of told Mystique. And this is really cool. This is the stuff that Hickman does so well. But it's one page of a comic book. Everything else is just leading up to that. And furthermore, it's just essentially the teaser for the next big event you got to buy in. This fall, Inferno. 2 pages, by the way, dedicated to this 2-page spread of an infographic. Does anyone care about this code anymore? Like, I used to get all excited in the beginning, like deciphering the codes, and now I'm so, whatever. I'm so done with it. So look, I had to read this book because it came out. Everyone was talking about it. Oh, excited. Oh, Hickman's back. Oh, yeah, it's going to... sorry, I'm not impressed. Is it better than the first 6 issues I read? Absolutely. Maybe I would have read beyond 6 issues if this had been the first issue, which it should have been. This feels like what X-Men number 1 should have been like. We shouldn't have had 20 issues of X-Men to get here. Or sorry, 19. Way more if you consider all the giant-sized X-Men's. If you consider New Mutants. If you consider Marauders, Hellions, X-Corp, X-Factor. There's probably half a dozen more that I'm not recalling off the top of my head. Hundreds of issues, 100+ issues to get where we're at. It's just a bunch of wheels spinning. And look, I love Hickman. I recently did on my indie comic show how East of West, we did a big old thing over many episodes of that East of West. Check it out if you haven't. But this is not that. I'm not prejudiced against. I don't know if Hickman's just farming his stuff out. Like I said, this is a better written episode, but it's like phoning in. He's got one thing to say. He's like, he knows the page he wants to do. That's here. He wants to lead up. This is the bread and butter. And then he's like, I got 19 pages to fill. How do I get up to this part? It's fine, I guess. Unless you are tired of spending $4 or $5 just to get this little drip of a story. I'm not impressed. I apparently X-Men fans really are, because they're gobbling this up. They're all super excited to spend hundreds of more dollars to get this dripped out. The art is it's passable by modern comic standards, but this is X-Men. This is the flagship title. Why are we not having, Pepe Larraz on here? Why does Daredevil have a better artist than X-Men? Now, not that I'm complaining. Daredevil's the best comic in Marvel, but do you see what I'm saying? They're just taking your money. I can't recommend this. I'm going to give it 3 stars, barely, because it's passable, but that's a generous 3 stars. This video is way too long. Hopefully I've saved you. I may have wasted your time on this video, but hopefully I saved you more time in the long run. Thanks for watching.